The wind howls over crashing waves as monstrous Viking men leap from their longships. Towering beasts, faces smeared in war paint, muscles glistening, and axes already wet with blood. They roar as they set villages ablaze, firelight dancing in their wild eyes. Back home, their women stir pots of stew over smoky hearths, rocking babies and praying their savage men return with gold, not curses. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about Vikings is completely wrong? Forget the horned helmets, the mindless savagery, and the blood-soaked raids. Today, we are stepping into the real world of the Norse people, where farmers doubled as warriors, women held unprecedented power, and honor meant more than life itself. Welcome to a world where the morning mist rises from fjords that stretch like fingers into rugged landscapes, where the scent of wood smoke mingles with salt air, and where every sunrise could bring either prosperity or peril. This is the Viking Age, and you're about to experience it like never before, in a way that brings this ancient world to life. The year is 950 CE. The sun creeps over the horizon, casting long shadows across a Norse settlement nestled between rolling hills and a protective bay. But this isn't just any dawn. This is the beginning of a typical day that could reshape your understanding of one of history's most misunderstood civilizations. Our journey begins in the longhouse of Bjorn Ironside. Not the legendary son of Ragnar, but a common farmer warrior whose story represents millions of Norse people whose lives have been overshadowed by Hollywood myths. As the first light filters through the smoke hole in the roof, Bjorn's wife Astrid is already stirring the embers of last night's fire. This scene might seem ordinary, but it's extraordinary in its authenticity. But here's where your preconceptions start crumbling. Astrid isn't a meek, oppressed woman waiting for her husband's commands. In Norse society, women enjoyed rights that wouldn't be seen elsewhere in Europe for centuries. She can request a divorce, own property, run businesses, and even serve as a priestess. As she kneads barley bread and tends to the porridge, she's also mentally calculating trade routes, planning household finances, and making decisions that affect the entire family's survival. Children in Viking society faced a harsh reality from birth. Only the strongest survived the brutal winters and constant threats of disease and conflict. But those who did grow up were shaped by a culture that valued courage, wisdom, and honor above all else. Young Eric, Bjorn's 10-year-old son, awakens to begin his daily education in the arts of war and peace. He'll spend his morning practicing with wooden swords, learning to read runes, and memorizing the epic poems that preserve his people's history. The Norse educational system was remarkably sophisticated for its time. Children learned through oral tradition, absorbing complex stories that taught moral lessons, historical events, and practical survival skills. The sagas weren't just entertainment, they were encyclopedias of knowledge passed down through generations, ensuring that wisdom survived even when books could not. As the household awakens, the sounds of daily life begin to fill the air. The rhythmic thud of axes splitting wood, the gentle lowing of cattle, the splash of water being drawn from wells. These sounds create a symphony of survival that has echoed across Scandinavia for centuries. But don't mistake this for a simple, primitive existence. The Vikings were master craftsmen, innovative farmers, and skilled traders who connected distant corners of the world long before globalization became a buzzword. Bjorn's breakfast consists of porridge made from barley or oats, accompanied by cheese, dried fish, and perhaps some honey if the family is prosperous. The Vikings were surprisingly health-conscious, understanding the importance of nutrition for maintaining strength during long voyages and harsh winters. Their diet included fresh vegetables from carefully tended gardens, protein from livestock and hunting, and preserved foods that could last for months. The morning meal is also a time for planning. Bjorn discusses the day's priorities with his household. Fields need tending, repairs are required on the barn, and a trading expedition needs preparation. Decision-making in Viking society was surprisingly democratic for its time. While Bjorn leads his household, major decisions affecting the community would be made at the Thing, a democratic assembly where free men could voice their opinions and vote on important matters. After breakfast, the real work begins. Viking society was fundamentally agricultural, despite popular images of constant warfare. Bjorn tends to his fields, growing barley, oats, and vegetables that will sustain his family through the winter. He's also a skilled blacksmith, crafting tools and weapons that are both functional and beautiful. The Norse approach to craftsmanship was deeply spiritual. They believed that creating something beautiful was a way of honoring the gods. Meanwhile, Astrid manages what amounts to a complex business operation. She oversees the household's textile production, spinning wool into thread that will be woven into clothing and trade goods. She manages the dairy operation, ensuring that milk is properly processed into cheese and butter. She tends to the herb garden, growing medicinal plants that could mean the difference between life and death in a world without modern medicine. The children have their own responsibilities. Eric tends to the animals, learning to read their behavior and understand their needs. His sister Ingrid helps with food preparation and textile work, but she also receives training in martial arts and leadership. Viking women were expected to defend their homes when the men were away, and many became renowned warriors and leaders in their own right. As midday approaches, the pace of life intensifies. This is when traders might arrive with news from distant lands, when disputes need resolution, and when the community comes together to share information and resources. The Vikings were master networkers, maintaining relationships across vast distances through a combination of kinship, trade, and strategic alliances. The afternoon brings different challenges and opportunities. Weather permitting, this might be the time for maritime activities. The Vikings were unquestionably the greatest seafarers of their age, but their relationship with the sea was complex. It was simultaneously a highway to wealth and adventure, and a graveyard that claimed countless lives. Bjorn's brother Magnus arrives with news from a recent trading expedition to the British Isles. He brings silver coins, exotic spices, and stories of distant lands. This exchange of goods and information was the lifeblood of Viking society, connecting isolated communities to a broader world of commerce and culture. The evening meal is a time for storytelling and community bonding. As darkness falls and the family gathers around the hearth, the day's work gives way to cultural activities that defined Norse identity. The skald or storyteller might recite epic poems that preserve the deeds of heroes and gods. These aren't just entertainment, they're historical records, moral instruction, and spiritual guidance all woven together in memorable verse. As night falls and the family prepares for rest, they engage in rituals that connect them to their ancestors and gods. The Norse spiritual world was complex and deeply personal, emphasizing honor, courage, and the acceptance of fate. They believed that how you lived mattered more than how long you lived, and that death with honor was preferable to life with shame. This single day in the life of a Viking family reveals a civilization far more sophisticated, egalitarian, and complex than popular culture suggests. These weren't savage barbarians, but skilled craftsmen, innovative farmers, democratic citizens, and devoted family members navigating a challenging world with remarkable resilience and wisdom. The Viking Age wasn't just about raids and conquest. It was about ordinary people living extraordinary lives in one of history's most fascinating civilizations. Through their daily routines, family relationships, and community interactions, we see a people who shaped the medieval world and whose influence still resonates today. If this glimpse into the old ways stirred your spirit, mark your approval with a like, and bind your oath to the channel by subscribing. Speak your thoughts in the comments, for even the quietest voice has value in the hall. Until next we meet, may your hearth be warm, your path steady, and may your hunger for the wisdom and quiet truths of the common folk of our past never fade.